Okay guys, today we're doing an ultimate drive teardown because I have a bunch of non-working drives. For example, I've got DVD drives, I've got hard drives, I've got other DVD drives, but these aren't laptops. I have hard drives again, but they're laptop hard drives. You can see I've got plenty of stuff to take apart, and we're going to be doing an ultimate teardown video. So let's get started with these hard drives up here first. First up, I'm going to be opening this newer drive. It's a Samsung. I believe it's 500 gigabytes. Taking off the top here, we can see that there is a disc, a little reader head right here. So underneath the plate is this metal coil, followed by another metal plate which has a magnet on it. If we look at the top plate right here, we can see that it also has a magnet on it. We take the little drive head, it sticks to it. And so this is kind of a motor. When this moves, it's this coil right here getting power, and then the magnets push it. So it's almost like a servo. Taking out the disc, we can see that there's this little, what looks to be an infrared sensor right here. Looking at the disc itself, the disc is made of glass, so it's actually very fragile, and the smallest amount of fingerprints can make the disc completely unusable. Now we are disassembling this drive, and I do not plan to reassemble it, but if you were to repair a drive by opening where the disc is, you would want to be extremely careful and really clean. I have tried to repair drives before. I have not succeeded. Comparing the disc to a floppy drive disc, we can see that the disc is smaller yet holds way more information. Both of the discs are reflective, although this one is way more reflective, the hard drive disc. And the floppy disk is a little bit bigger. This one, I can get my fingerprints all over, and I can probably, if I do it right, still get it in a floppy drive and still get it to work. Because these are magnetic discs, and magnetic discs function the same way a VHS or cassette tape do. Taking a look at the Toshiba hard drive, we can tell that this one only has 40 gigabytes, as it's from a much older laptop, and this one does not work at all. But even if it did, the connector is proprietary, and I have no laptops or anything that use this connector anyways. The inside of this hard drive is very similar. It's a glass disc, a little arm right here to read the disc. It's almost like a record player, but not quite, because it's a lot smaller and it uses lasers, not a physical groove. This disc, again, would have to be washed over and over again to get this thing clean and usable again. The disc has been scratched, so it will no longer work. Looking at the discs, I cannot tell them apart at all. This one's from the Toshiba drive, and this one's from Samsung, but you would never be able to tell, as they're the exact same thickness and size. If you look at the drives side by side, they're nearly identical, but they do have a couple subtle differences. And moving on to the larger desktop hard drives. Now they're both 500 gigabyte, but this one right here on the left actually has 16 megabytes of cache, and this one has 32 megabytes of cache. They're both SATA drives, and I kind of lied. I'm not going to take both of these apart, but I am going to repair one of them, as this one does not work, but has a working SATA down here. This one does work, but the SATA port is broken off, so I'm going to do a quick swap. Okay, after a quick swap, this drive should be functional now, but it will be slightly slower since the board did come from this drive, which is the slower drive. So now let's open up the completely non-working one, the one that's completely dead. Taking a look inside this disk, we can see that it's essentially one of the smaller hard drives, but just slightly larger. The read-write arm seems to be a lot more equipped, so it probably writes and reads a little bit faster than the small drives, but surprisingly holds the same amount of information. Oh, and if you made it this far in the video and you're enjoying, please consider liking and subscribing. I'm trying to grow the channel so I can make better content. So just if you like the videos and content, you can subscribe, and you can always unsubscribe later. Back to the video. Alright, so I've attempted to get this disc out, and I've gotten 3 of the screws out, pull the disc in, and I just keep stripping it more and more, so I'm not getting anywhere. But here's a size comparison of this disc to a 500 gig disc that was in a desktop computer. So you can see the desktop disc is about half the size as this disc right here, and slightly, just barely larger is the hard drive disc than a floppy, which is very surprising, as this holds not even a megabyte of data. This is literally a couple kilobytes, and this is 500 gigs. This is half a terabyte right here. and I ruined it by touching it. But like I said before, I can rub my hands all over this and it's fine. I can literally crease it too, and chances are it'll probably still work. Moving on to this compact Dell drive, also from a laptop. Now, inside of this compact DVD drive, there's not really a lot going on. It's pretty standard. Got the little reader right here, moves back and forth, which this is what usually fails. Usually it'll stop moving. It feels particularly loose, so it probably broke. Underneath this metal shielding right here, you can see that the reader right here, which moves back and forth, or it did. I think I broke it because the gear wasn't even touching. That's probably why it slid so easily. So we've discovered the mechanical failure here, which is gears. They're not touching like they're supposed to. Also, real quick, I just want to mention what looks to be a little solenoid right here. It's the funniest thing. It's so tiny. Alright, so you might see this drive and think, what machine did this come out of? Because it's definitely a DVD drive for a computer, but it doesn't look like it's from a computer. And it's a rewritable drive too. CD, DVD, rewritable drive. This actually came from a DVD player, which is kind of surprising. I think they really cheapened out on the DVD player and just got a cheap rewritable drive and threw it in there. But it's weird because it's rewritable. There was no a write to it, so it was just wasted money. I guess it was probably cheaper to get writable drives than non-rewritables. Now, inside this drive is also very simple. The read-write head is a lot bigger on this than it was on the compact one. The issue here, it won't open. No matter how hard you push it, it will not open. You literally have to pull it apart with 2 hands to get this open, which is really weird. I know you're not supposed to open them when there's no power. It's like this even with power. It won't open at all. Underneath the plastic, you can see this dock right here, or this bay. The entire thing moves out of the DVD drive. This one did not move out, actually stayed in here, and these ones were more towards the end of DVDs and CDs being used. But once again, we can find the mechanical failure fairly easily, as this is very hard to turn, and even the small ones are incredibly hard to turn. So this just got really jammed up and no longer works. So I guess the DVD player itself didn't cause this issue. A lot of DVD drives from this era, which is like the late 90s, early 2000s, fail from mechanical failures. Most of these never fail from technical failures ever. Alright, here we have the full mechanism itself. So on the bottom here, we can see it's got a little ribbon cable that moves along with it, and this would usually plug into the board, which I have taken out. This little corkscrew down here is what moves the DVD thing along its own track. You can see it's very oiled up. It works perfectly fine. And this part itself works fine, but the bay doesn't work anymore, which means the entire thing is unusable. Moving on to this drive. Now, this one came out of a computer. The computer I actually disassembled in a separate video. The video is called Computer Teardown. Go check that out on my channel if you haven't already. Right, with the metal housing off of the DVD drive, we can see it looks very similar to the one from the DVD player. Now, this wheel spins perfectly fine over here. This part works great. This, on the other hand, does not move in the slightest. So the failure with this drive was actually the read-write head. Now this wheel spins. I mean, this could use a little bit of oil, but it still doesn't work. So this entire mechanism needs to be replaced. And I will replace that, and we'll see if it works later in the video. Taking a look at both of the drives we've opened so far, they are slightly different. They're the same model, but this one is actually newer than this one. This drive right here has better design on this metal plate right here, and this one they kind of cheapened out on this metal plate. This one's just overall better. The other ones were probably custom ordered as well. Just said make them as cheap as you can, and they bought all of those because, you know, DVD player. Yeah, these drives would have been interchangeable. To do was a little bit of modifying to the exterior of the cases. Switched the drives out for one of their... and it would have worked just like it came with it. Alright, finally, last but definitely not least, a CD readable drive. The worst drive, all the drives. Now, the only big difference here is that the outer case is white and the circuit board here. Now, the circuit board can only handle CDs, and this drive right here can actually read other files with it. You might have to switch a couple pieces out on it. Might be able to read DVDs. Although the CD drive is very generic, if you look closely, it actually says ASUS down here on this motherboard. And there's a couple other parts that also say ASUS. So it's an ASUS drive. Taking a look at the drive itself, we can see there's not really a lot going on here that we haven't seen in the other drives. If we line them all up, ironically, the CD drive is the biggest one. and probably the oldest drive. Yeah, this one's from a DVD player. This one's from the computer that this one came from. So these were from the same machine. This one probably came with it since it was weaker than this one. And yeah guys, that'll probably have to call it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Once again, if you liked the video, please consider subscribing. See you guys in the next one.